Okay, not sure what happened on that last one. We just lost connection. Don't know what's going on with the Wi-Fi. So, today, this topic is going to be a little bit more intimate, a little bit more personal. It's one that some people might have problems talking about, and that's okay. If you want to read through it, their blog will be posted later, and you can go back and catch it if that's easier for you. This is my experience. Full disclosure, not a medical doctor, not a medical professional at all. I'm a mom who's been through birth trauma, who overcame the fear of birth, and figured out a way to heal from it all. Okay? So that's my qualifications for this. Take what you hear today or what you read and use it the way what applies to you in the best way you can. So when you're overcoming a fear, that's hard. As adults, we've overcome a lot of our fears. We're pretty good at moving on and dealing with something. But when that fear is wrapped in with a trauma, it's really difficult for anyone to overcome, even when you're an adult. Now wrap that trauma around an experience that's supposed to be joyful, that's supposed to be happy, something like birth. Where do you start? Who do you talk to? How do you know what help you need? How do you know if you even have, this fear? And a lot of this is hard because people don't get it. Unless you have been in the situation where you've had the birth trauma, people don't get it. And they won't. So what is birth trauma? It's not just physical, okay? That's the first thing you have to realize, is it's not just something physical that happens to baby or mama. It can also be emotional. It can be psychological. I refused to believe that I had birth trauma for years. Well, not years. A good year. Why? Because nothing physical happened. What I didn't realize was that I was having issues with PTSD issues. The sound of an alarm at work that sounded just like the hospital monitor. It was a machine. It sounded just like the hospital monitor. I couldn't do my job because I couldn't help. I could not physically help prep a cow for a C-section when she needed help. I had problems helping cows that needed help when giving birth. I'd never had that issue before. I was usually hands in because that's what I wanted to do. Couldn't do it anymore. With my daughter, people didn't get it. They could not understand why I was refused to get pregnant again. I was irritable. I was fearful. I wanted nothing to do with a doctor, and I didn't want a pregnancy again. Ever. But in their eyes, to the outside world, those who weren't in that room, even the doctors and nurses, really, the doctors acted to save my daughter and myself. But what everybody doesn't see from the outside is all the events that led up to those decisions. They didn't see the complete lack of control, the complete lack of say in anything that happened once I was checked into the hospital. That's where my trauma came from. And all this lack of control, lack of say, that led to a C-section I didn't want and was not prepared for and had no warning for. And that takes a huge toll on somebody. Birth is supposed to be an intimate event. Mom is supposed to participate, as well as your support, whether that's dad, another friend, another significant other, the baby, whatever. But when all that is taken away and mom becomes a spectator, and sometimes the dad. And even worse, when those events will keep snowballing and turn into an unexpected or unconsented surgery, it can leave deep emotional scars as well as physical scars. Those physical scars heal. They also heal with emotions bound into them. And if you don't heal those emotions, the physical scar never completely heals either. How are you supposed to begin the process of recovering from that? When, especially in a lot of rural areas where I am, it's not known. It's not heard of. It's not talked about. How do you conquer the fear of future births? Because my husband and I wanted to have another child. We didn't want to raise a single child. But we also didn't want to go through that again. So we were going to adopt, right? Perfect solution. Adoption's expensive. We'll end up not adopting. Maybe someday. Haven't done it yet. The secret to overcoming something as traumatic as birth trauma, and healing from that fear of getting pregnant again, of going through birth again, is one step at a time. And again, like I said, every journey is going to be a little different, but one step at a time is how you go. Like I said before, I did not realize how much of an issue I had until a little over a year later. When I was still in physical pain, I was avoiding the emotions at all. Like, I was a emotional barrier at stuff that doesn't exist. Yeah, my body didn't let me do that this time. I found an OT. I had to drive 2 hours to get to him, but I found an OT that specialized in C-section care and pelvic care, post C-section care and pelvic care. And I started the physical healing work to heal that scar, to break down the scar tissue, so I wasn't in pain anymore. But that also led to uncovering the emotional scars that I needed to work through and needed healed. I journaled. I read books on emotional trauma. I used essential oils a lot. I got a lot of guidance from my OT on where to start. She was very knowledgeable, thankfully. And there we go. Okay, we're back. I don't know what's going on today because nobody's in the house using the Wi-Fi. And the weather's nice. So, I was fortunate to have an OT who was knowledgeable in the emotional patterns of the body and how it affects the body. Huge, huge help to getting me started. When dealing with the fear of birth, you cannot overcome that fear without dealing with the past trauma. As I was going through my healing, a wise midwife told me that if you don't deal with the emotions of the past, as they come up, because your body will release them if you're working with it, as you're ready to deal with it. If you don't deal with those, they will come back up. And it's usually when those are breaking open physically, which is during birth again. And you'd better believe those emotions will affect your future birth. It can stall a birth because fear is a huge binder. In nature, fear produces adrenaline. Adrenaline leads to fight or flight, which leads to running, which shuts down all unnecessary function to survive. Your digestive, birth. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to give birth. Birth is not going to progress. All of those things, all your energy is diverted to the external muscles to run. You have to deal with the fear of the past. What happened in the past, those emotions, to overcome the fear of birth in the future. It's not easy, but you don't have to do it alone either. I learned to tune into my body. Like I said, I used a lot of essential oils. Specific oils are formulated different ways to help those emotions come up, to break through, to release them, and to change the emotional pattern. Instead of, yes, you will still remember, but instead of remembering that birth with heart-stopping knots in my stomach, never, just breath stopping, I go, yes, that happened, but I can move on. I can talk about it. I don't shut down. Your body holds emotions in the cells, and if they're not dealt with, they're buried, and you have to bring them up. For me, the final step in overcoming the fear of birth was becoming pregnant again. That was the only way for me to finish my healing process. Doesn't mean it's for everybody, but that was the way I finished. The difference this time was I walked each step, consulting God, starting with the agreement that I was going to do it His way. And when He knew I was ready to take on that final step of healing, He would open my womb. Otherwise, keep it closed. I don't want anything to do with it unless it's your will and your way. I trusted Him for His guidance. I surrounded myself with the people who are loving and supportive for birth. I interviewed lots. I talked to many people. I narrowed it down to 2 different providers and interviewed them, prayed about them, found the one that matched best for us. When it came to the actual birth, I prepared myself by reading the books on birth, the birth process. I made a loose plan. Honestly, after the first plan completely fell apart, I was very hesitant to make any plan. But I knew what I needed. And my midwife and I talked about it, and we had conversations about that and how to give me what I needed. Ultimately, the time for my son's birth came. Started slow and easy, gained intensity, as it should, and my son was born at home, surrounded by love and support. Not only was his birth beautiful and redemptive in itself, but it finished that healing process of my daughter's birth. It took that final pain and doubt that my body couldn't do it, and healed it. Because God showed me that A, He's sovereign, and He is loving and gracious. So, if you want more on birth healing and healing from that birth trauma and my specific steps, follow the link into my course, and you'll find more there. We'll talk to you all later. Hope you guys get out and enjoy the beautiful weather today.